I've cleaned places most people try to forget. Gas station bathrooms that looked like murder scenes. Medical clinics that still smelled like fear at 3 a.m. A warehouse where the rats were so organized they practically had union meetings. None of it scared me. It just paid bills. But the Hollow Creek job? That should have scared me from the start. The listing was simple. Hollow Creek Consolidated School. Overnight custodial, 11 p.m., 6 a.m. The school had been temporarily closed after the district ran out of money and parents ran out of patience. Weeds swallowing the football field. Windows boarded up on the east wing. A faded badger mascot still grinning on the gym doors. The pay was obscene for an empty building. Time and a half for nuisance hours. A $400 signing bonus upon successful completion of first week. Who the hell phrases it like that? Successful completion. Like people failed. The facilities manager, Mr. Vale, called 10 minutes after I submitted my application. No interview, no reference check. Just, "Can you start tonight?" Tonight? I hesitated. "Don't you want to?" "Keys are ready. The board needs it maintained for reopening. Check the boilers, walk the halls, keep things dry. Old building. Older than it looks." My bank account had $17 in it. I can be there by 11. Good. Use the staff entrance on Birch Street. White door with a dent. Under the broken camera. The broken camera? He didn't answer that. Just, "Take the rules seriously." "What rules?" The line went dead. Hollow Creek sat on a hill like a concrete ship that had run aground and decided to stay. The parking lot was cracked asphalt with grass growing through like wiry hair. One flickering streetlight hummed above the Birch Street entrance. Moths circling it like dying prayers. The white staff door had a dent shaped like someone's shoulder or head. The security camera above it was shattered, its lens spiderwebbed and opaque. I pressed the buzzer out of habit. Obviously, no one answered. The key Vale left under the mat was attached to a faded blue lanyard, Hollow Creek Badgers. Below the mascot, someone had stenciled, "Keep to the path." The door opened to that universal school smell. Floor wax, old paper, institutional detergent, years of accumulated sweat. But underneath something else. Something damp and metallic, like pennies left in water. I found the custodial office at the end of a service corridor. Cinder block walls, a desk from the Reagan administration, a bulletin board with curling notices about unplugging microwaves and not propping fire doors. There was a laminated map marking the wings. A, admin, B, classrooms, C, science, D, gym, auditorium, E, east, sealed. A wall clock read 10:58, but the second hand ticked just a fraction too slowly. On the desk sat a manila envelope marked "To night staff." I opened it expecting schedules and supply lists. Instead, I found a single sheet of paper, folded and refolded so many times the creases had worn soft. Block letters across the top. Rules. Hollow Creek. Follow to the letter. Check hallway clocks every 15 minutes, but never reset them if they're wrong. If you reset them, they'll know you're paying attention. Never look directly into classroom B12 after 12:10 a.m. Use the trophy case glass to see inside. If a chair is facing the door, do not walk past it. If the PA system hisses, don't answer. Don't speak your name into any microphone after midnight. It keeps names. Lock the nurse's office by 1 a.m. If the curtain is moving when the windows are shut, do not check behind it. Do not step on chalk drawings near the art rooms. If you smudge a line, wipe the entire drawing away before leaving that hallway. If the boys' locker room smells like chlorine, leave the gym wing immediately. We haven't had a pool in over 20 years. When the bell rings at 2:17 a.m., count the rings. If you count more than 8, go to the custodian office and sit with your back to the door until it stops. If a student voice asks for a hall pass, say, "Passes are in the office." Do not offer to help. Do not ask questions. Between 3:40 and 4:10 a.m., do not open the white staff door. Not for any reason. If you're in the office, don't look at it. If you're in the hall, keep moving. If the scoreboard in the gym turns on by itself, don't unplug it. Watch the number. If it shows 313, you are not alone. If time moves backward, return to the custodial office immediately and read these rules aloud. All of them. Even the ones you didn't break. Leave at 6 a.m., not 5:59, not 6:01. The difference matters more than you think. At the bottom, in different ink, a different hand, keep to the path. There was a second sheet listing my rounds. Boilers, C-Wing, Hallway B, Auditorium, D, Nurse, A, Gym, D. Scribbled below, E-Wing sealed, circled twice. Something had been erased there. Hard. The paper was pilled and torn where the eraser had dug in. I stared at the rules and laughed. One dry bark of disbelief. Someone was hazing the new guy. Had to be. Night shift custodians always left jokes for each other. You need the humor when you're alone in a building after midnight. I clipped the keys to my belt, grabbed the flashlight, and started my rounds. That was my first mistake. C-Wing first. The science hall still had posters blue taped to walls. Planets, the digestive system, a periodic table where someone had drawn smiley faces on the noble gases. Lab stools stacked in fours. Safety goggles tangled in bins like dead jellyfish. The boiler room was hot and loud, ancient iron bellies with gauge faces like old clocks. 2 running low, the third flickering, its pilot light pulsing like a thinking eye. I checked my watch, 11:23. The hallway clock outside said 11:17. I remembered Rule 1, left it alone. It felt like passing a test I didn't agree with. On my way back, I passed the art rooms. Paper suns with yarn rays sagged in windows. Outside room B19, a hopscotch grid in chalk. Outside B15, a chalk circle with a house drawn inside. Stick figure simple. 4 lines, a triangle roof, crooked windows. Inside the circle, tiny handprints pressed into the dust like the ghosts of fingers. I stepped around it carefully. The rules were already infecting me. I was moving like they had gravity. I told myself one more time it was just a prank. Then the PA system hissed. I was crossing the empty cafeteria when it started. Soft static, like a breath too close to a microphone. Then the brittle click of someone pressing the paging button. Pressing and releasing. Pressing and releasing. I looked up at the speaker. Don't speak your name into any microphone after midnight. Rule 3 didn't say anything about hissing, but I kept moving. The static followed me down B hallway in short, wet bursts. At the corner by classroom B12, I stopped. My tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth. Rule 2. I could see through the classroom window. Desks in rows, motivational posters about teamwork and perseverance, a teacher's desk with papers still scattered on it. The door was propped open with a yellow rubber wedge. Across from it, the trophy case. 6 trophies. Basketball, volleyball, County Spelling Bee, 1987. The glass was slightly fogged. Used the trophy case glass to see inside. I positioned myself to the side and angled my head. In the reflection, the classroom wavered. Most of the chairs faced forward, except one, middle of the room, turned toward the door. Not toward the teacher's desk like the others, facing out, staring the way a chair can stare when you've been alone too long. If a chair is facing the door, do not walk past it. The hallway beyond B12 led to the nurse's office and admin, the direct route. But I could go around through D-Wing. It would add 10 minutes. My brain tried to get clever, tried to negotiate. No kids, no staff, no reason a chair should matter. I took one step toward the doorway. The air pushed back. Not wind, not pressure, something else, like stepping into a photograph you don't belong in. Wrong, fundamentally, cellularly wrong. I took the long way. The auditorium was a black mouth, rows of seats like patient teeth, damp velvet smell. On stage, someone had draped a blanket over the piano like a body waiting to be identified. I swept my flashlight across the stage. Dust particles spun in the beam like snow. The gym doors were chained but loose. The chain was ceremonial, not functional. I slipped through. The gym was massive and hollow, the kind of space that makes you feel smaller. The scoreboard on the far wall was dark. Above the bleachers, a hollow Creek Badgers banner sagged, letters flaking like dead skin. The locker room smelled like old rubber and cheap shampoo, and underneath, sharp, chemical, distinct, chlorine. My brain stuttered. There was no pool here. There had been one once. I'd seen the faded brochures in the admin hallway, boasting about it, but they'd filled it in and floored over it more than a decade ago. My nose didn't care about history. I backed out before I even remembered Rule 6. If the locker room smells like chlorine, leave the gym wing. Message received. The cafeteria's industrial fridge kicked on as I passed. The compressor was too loud for an empty building, and the sound climbed the walls and made my teeth ache. I checked my watch. 12:04. The hallway clock outside the library said 11:58. Time was sliding. The nurse's office had a half-moon window and a door with an observation pane. Inside, white cabinets, a cot with paper rolled over it, a curtain on a bent rod. The windows were closed tight. Lock the nurse's office by 1 a.m. If the curtain is moving when the windows are shut, do not check behind it. The curtain hung still. I locked the door and walked away. When I passed B12 again, I used the trophy case. The chair was still turned toward the door, but now another chair near the back was angled wrong too, like it was learning from the first one. At the main intersection of B and D halls, the PA popped again. A child's voice whispered, like someone cupping their hands around the microphone. "Is anyone there?" I kept walking. Didn't answer. Didn't say my name. The bell rang at 2:17 a.m. I wasn't ready for it, even though Rule 7 had told me it would happen. The sound was visceral, the kind of bell that lives in your bones from years of schooling. Stand up, move, follow the herd. But there was no herd here. Just me and an empty building absorbing the sound and throwing it back from two directions. I started counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The bell didn't stop. 9. My stomach clenched. If you count more than 8, go to the custodian office and sit with your back to the door until it stops. I didn't want to. The custodial office felt like a trap, but my legs were already moving. 10, 11, 12. I reached the service corridor, slammed into the office, spun the chair toward the cinder block wall, and sat, back to the door. The bell kept ringing. 15, 16, 20. I lost count because counting became meaningless. It rang like it had something to prove, like it was calling students who would never come. Then it stopped, mid-ring, like a hand clamped over a mouth. Silence. Something rustled under the desk. Paper sliding, though there was no draft. The rules page had moved. The second sheet, the one with my rounds, had shifted enough for me to see the erased section. I tilted it toward the light. Ghost letters pressed into torn paper. D on E-wing. D. The rest was obliterated, erased again and again until the paper remembered the violence. The buzzer at the white staff door sounded. Once, weak, the wiring barely functional. I checked my watch, 2:21 a.m. Rule 9 said don't open the door between 3:40 and 4:10. It was only 2:21. The rule didn't apply yet. I stood up, started toward the hallway, then stopped. The rules weren't suggestions. They were a map. You could leave the path, but the woods wouldn't move for you. I sat back down and waited. I did the next round on autopilot. Wiped surfaces, checked baseboards, scraped staples out of linoleum for no reason except to keep my hands busy. At B12, I used the trophy case again. The chair at the front had rotated, not toward the door, just shifted, the way a clock face turns when you're not looking. On the teacher's desk, a rolled poster I hadn't noticed before. Rubber band around it, yellowed and brittle. My instinct said, don't look inside. The rules didn't mention posters, but rules grow branches when you're not looking. Down by the art rooms, the chalk circle had been smudged, a small nick across the arc like a fingernail dragging. My custodian brain kicked in. Fix it. Then Rule 5 kicked in harder. If you smudge a line, wipe the whole drawing away before leaving that hall. I crouched, pulled a damp rag from my belt, and erased the circle. The stick house smudged, blurred, vanished, like it had only been leaning on existence, waiting for permission to disappear. When I stood, the PA hissed again. A boy's voice came through, thin and formal, like he'd rehearsed. "Hall pass?" I said what the paper told me to say. "Passes are in the office." My voice sounded wrong. Too loud, too real. I hadn't heard it in hours. The speakers clicked off. Somewhere down the hall, a locker door yawned open with a metal groan. I didn't walk faster. Speed feels like safety, but it just gets you where you're going sooner. I headed toward admin to double-check the nurse's office lock. The hallway clock there read 1:04. My watch read 2:46. I didn't reset anything. On my way back, I cut behind the auditorium through the service corridor, the kind of hallway meant for equipment and people who move like equipment. I passed the old green room, barely bigger than a closet, and the dim glow of an exit sign that hadn't worked in a decade. On stage, something shifted under the piano blanket. Not wind, not settling. Movement. Pawing, like a dog getting comfortable under a coat. The blanket rose slightly. Settled. I kept walking. The gym swallowed sound the way certain rooms swallow heat. When I stepped inside, I knew the scoreboard would be on. The darkness had that quality. It wasn't just dark. It was dark with intent. The red LED glowed, 3:13. No game, no season, no reason. If it shows 3:13, you are not alone. The number didn't change, didn't flicker, just burned there like an accusation. From the ceiling. "Hall pass?" "Passes are in the office," I said. Silence. Then, sneakers on lacquered floor, not mine, not echo. A brief scuff, then the hush of someone who knows how to stop being heard. I backed out slowly. The chain on the gym doors clinked, disapproving. At 3:07, my watch said 2:59. At 3:09, it said 2:52. Time was running backward. Rule 11. If time moves backward, return to the custodial office and read these rules aloud. I went to the office, closed the door, sat down, and read. All 12 rules. Out loud. My voice catching on words like they and it and alone, like I was speaking to something that already knew. When I finished, the wall clock ticked forward properly. My watch corrected to 3:14. Then the buzzing started at the white staff door. Short bursts, then a long, insistent push. Keys rattled in the lock. "Facility!" A man's voice, raspy, impatient. "Open up!" I checked the surveillance monitor, the ancient black and white screen showing the door. Static scrolled from bottom to top. But there was a shape at the door. Wrong. Too still. Like a cutout from a magazine taped to the feed. "It's cold out here, kid." The voice knew I was young, though I'd never told anyone my age. "You're the new one, right? Last guy didn't listen either." "Open up." I looked at the clock. 3:41 a.m. between 3:40 and 4:10. Do not open the door. "Hall pass?" The child's voice whispered through the PA, soft as sugar. "Passes are in the office," I said quietly, not wanting the thing at the door to hear me. The buzzer cut out. The keys stopped. Silence piled on silence. Behind me I heard scratching. Not chalk, not pen. Something sharp dragged across cork. I turned around slowly. 2 new staples had appeared on the bulletin board, empty, waiting for papers. Between them, scratched into the cork with a tack, "Keep to the path." My mouth went dry. The buzzer screamed, one long, rattling shriek, then died. I waited until 4:11 to move. The last 90 minutes of a night shift reveal what you're made of. I did one final round like a priest with a failing sermon. The nurse's office, locked, curtains still. In B Hall, the chalk circle I'd erased had, returned isn't the right word. It had reformed. Dust pulled to edges by breath I hadn't heard. The house was simpler this time. 4 lines, triangle, square window, 2 tall door. Inside the window, a single dot like an eye watching. In the B12 trophy case reflection, the chair was now at the door, not just facing it. Pressed against the threshold, rubber feet touching the frame. The rolled poster on the desk had unrolled a thumb's width. The rubber band made a sound like old skin. Hall pass. No question mark this time. Passes are in the office. It felt like prayer now. At the T intersection by the library, the hallway clock read 6:01. My watch read 5:17. Rule 12. Leave at 6 a.m., not 5:59, not 6:01. I thought about the arithmetic of survival. The auditorium doors breathed as I passed, seals flexing with temperature. On stage, the blanket over the piano had slid more. A wooden leg peeked out like bone. In the first row, third seat from the aisle, the cushion was compressed. When I shined my light on it, the depression vanished. Not because it rose, but because it had never been there at all. Back in the gym, the scoreboard had gone dark. Somewhere in the bleachers, metal settled with a ping that ricocheted overhead. The boys' locker room smelled damp, not chlorine. I still took the long way around. At the cafeteria, I saw a movement reflected in the glass doors, a figure in the lunch line, head bent, tray sliding. I cut my flashlight, let the dark be dark. When I turned it back on, nobody. The PA clicked, breathing, not whispered, not accidental. Human breath, slow and measured, like someone following a doctor's instructions. I broke protocol. "Who are you?" The speakers answered with a sound that didn't belong in a school. Water, moving in a deep, tiled space, slapping against walls, the echo of a high ceiling. Pool. I walked to the admin hallway because I knew what I'd find. The corkboard with district announcements held a faded color flyer. "Come swim at Hollow Creek." 2 kids in goggles, water flying from their hands. Lower corner, a sticker half peeled. Pool closed for renovation, 1999. Next to it, a staff photo. Custodial crew, 12 years ago. 3 men, 1 woman, all in gray uniforms. The man on the left had a thick mustache. The man on the right had a tattoo snaking up his forearm. In the middle, a tall man with weary eyes, hand resting on a push broom like a spine. His name badge read, Vale. I recognized those eyes. I didn't see myself in the photo. That should have been comforting. When I turned away, my reflection caught in the glass reception door. The angle made my lanyard read backward, "Keep to the path." It looked right that way. At 5:39, the bell rang again. Not the 2:17 bell, not the between-class bell. A slow, single toll that rolled down B Hall and crawled under my skin. I counted 1. Silence. 2. Silence. 3. A locker at the far end of the hall opened, gently, the way a hand opens when it wants you to see what's inside. I didn't go there. I'd already learned that lesson. One last stop at the nurse's office. The curtain moved. Windows shut. Air still. Do not check it. I checked the lock, not the curtain. Walked away with restraint I could feel in my teeth. At 5:56, my watch read 5:54. The hallway clocks read 6:03, 6:14, 5:12. All wrong, all confident. I stood in the service corridor outside the custodial office and listened to the building think about morning. The sun was only a rumor behind the boarded east wing. Leave at 6 a.m., not 5:59, not 6:01. I waited. The buzzer at the white door coughed once. A gentle knock followed. Polite, 2 knuckles, like a teacher being kind. "Janitor?" A man's voice, mild as paper. I didn't answer. Seconds stretched. My watch ticked to 6. Ow. The second hand touched 12 with relief. I opened the door. Mr. Vale stood there, shoulders hunched against wind that seemed to have weight. He was younger than the photo made him. Or the photo was older. The kind of old that cameras trap and won't release. He looked at me the way bosses look when measuring what survived and what got left behind. "Rough first night?" "You could say that," I said. My voice sounded distant, like I was speaking through the PA. "You follow the rules?" "As many as I could." "Who wrote them?" I asked. He glanced past me at the office, the bulletin board. the slow clock. Everyone writes them. Then no one does. That's the problem. I'm not coming back, I said, surprising myself with how easily the words came. He nodded like this was an acceptable answer on a test he'd given too many times. Leave your keys. I unclipped the lanyard and placed it in his palm. The blue nylon looked darker against his skin. Did you ever have a pool? I asked. He flinched. Barely, but I was looking for it. We closed it, before my time. You should fix your clocks. He smiled with half his face. They fix you, he said. The smile vanished. We walked out together. The morning sky was blue-gray like water left in a bucket. At the staff door, he stopped and touched the dent like a blessing. One last thing. The east wing. It's sealed, I said. For you. For me. For anyone who keeps to the path. A kid on a bicycle rode past on Birch Street, backpack bouncing. He didn't look at us, didn't look at the building. That was his rule, and he didn't need it written down. Vale pocketed the lanyard. You were here at 6? Yes. Not earlier? Not later? No. Good. His mouth hovered between thank you and warning. Most people don't get that right. Who was the janitor before me? He shrugged, the polite way of erasing someone. Ask the building. He stepped back inside without moving, and I realized the door had already closed, and I'd been talking to it like doors and people were different things. I walked to my car. The streetlight clicked off. Insects abandoned it. I turned the key. The radio, dead all night, popped to life on a station I hadn't set. A voice reading names. A roll call. Alphabetical, but by a system I didn't recognize. It said Vale, and a handful I didn't catch. It didn't say mine. At the first stoplight, I checked the visor for the small things that remind you you're alive. A wadded napkin, an old pay stub, a photo of my sister's kid with frosting on his chin. The pay stub slid free. Something else came with it. A folded sheet of paper, creased so many times the fibers had memory. Rules. Hollow Creek. Follow to the letter. At the bottom, in ink I recognized as my own, keep to the path. I put the car in park on an empty street and laughed because my body needed an exit. Then I stopped laughing. I drove home on a route I didn't know I knew. I slept in a chair with the lights on. I didn't go back the next night. I didn't collect the signing bonus. 2 weeks later, I saw a kid in a Hollow Creek hoodie at the grocery store. End of the cereal aisle, reading his phone, sneaker grinding an invisible line into the scuffed tile. When he looked up, he looked past me, to the edge of the aisle where the floor tile changed color. He stepped carefully over that seam without checking why. He kept to the path. The rule didn't need a building anymore. That night my phone buzzed. Facilities. 11-6. Available. Hollow Creek. No link. No reply why. Just the offer, like weather. I deleted it. Turned off my phone. Put the rules in the freezer under a bag of peas because cold felt like a kind of safe. Sometimes, in the small hours, my radiator ticks the way hallway clocks tick when they're wrong on purpose. Sometimes my upstairs neighbor rolls a chair, and it sounds exactly like a chair turning to face a door. When it does, I sit with my back to my door and read a list aloud in a voice I'm not sure is mine. Check the clocks. Don't look in B12. Don't say your name. Lock the nurse's office. Don't step on the drawings. Leave the gym when it smells like chlorine. Count the bell. Passes are in the office. Don't open the door between 3:40 and 4:10. Watch for 3:13. If time goes backward, read the rules. Leave at 6. Sometimes I add one that isn't written anywhere. Keep to the path. And sometimes the wall says it back. A month later, I took a day job at a different school. Elementary, new, bright vinyl and glass that pretends it isn't glass. On my first day, a little girl with a ponytail and a shirt that said, "Ask me about my crayons," stopped me in the hall. She held out a laminated bathroom pass. Do I go to the office or the nurse? Passes are in the office, I said before I could stop myself. She looked at me with a seriousness kids earn from serious parents. Okay. She went the other way, stepping carefully over a scuffed strip in the floor where the wax was different, like she'd learned something in her feet we hadn't taught her yet. At lunch, the PA clicked. The principal announced a fire drill, 6 names for pickup, 1 happy birthday. Nothing hissed. Nothing kept names. I went home and took the paper out of the freezer, laid it flat, thought about lighting it. I didn't. I folded it until it was coin-sized and put it in my pocket. On my walk to the corner store, a school bus passed with Hollow Creek faint under new paint, sold to a district that needed buses and fewer reminders. I stood on the curb and let the yellow blur by like a planet with its own gravity. I don't know where it was going, somewhere that kept to the path. When I got home, I set my phone face down, because that's a rule, and I know what rules are for. I sat with my back to the door without needing a reason. The radiator ticked, the upstairs chair rolled. Somewhere far off, a bell rang exactly the right number of times for a building that knows the difference. I counted just to hear myself count. I said my own name once into the empty room to make sure it still belonged to me. It did. Mostly. That night I dreamed of chalk circles repaired by hands I never saw. A pool full of water that remembered everyone who learned to float there. A kid in a hoodie stepping over a seam the way you step over a rule you can live with. In the dream, I was mopping the same hall over and over. Every time I reached the T intersection, the sign was different. Admin, art, exit, E. The mop left a path in the water that dried before it could be followed. When I looked behind me, no footprints. When I turned ahead, the corridor kept being ahead, which is all a person asks from a corridor if he's honest. And somewhere in that dream, a voice that knew my name and never said it, because it kept the rule we never wrote down. Some doors are kinder closed, so I keep to the path, and I leave at 6.